Now it's now it's time for questions. We had three very interesting presentations. Thank you. You have really the spirit of Jesuit, I think, spirituality of Jesuit. Because you have good sense for humor. This is very good. So it means that you are, as Ignatius wrote, that if you have sense for humor, you have also for spiritual life.
If you go to the Vatican, you need a sense of humor. If not,
so time for questions. Yeah.
Yeah.
For who?
I think for the I think the last presentation was very moving actually. Yeah. I think when you talk about the concept about the merit, the transmission of merit,
yes.
I think it sounds more like the Christianizations of merit. Because I think when the 19th century missionary to China, Robert Morrison, they also encountered the same problem. They actually used that Buddhist term, but they actually Christianized it. And in the translation process. So I think this is a beautiful similarities. But what I find interesting is I think when they decided to deal with the whole subject about ancestral worship, I think in many East Asian countries, that practice was actually based on a sense of fear. You know, you were so afraid of your ancestor, you have to worship in order to get some protection. But once you Christianize it, you actually turn the ancestor to be at the mercy of the Christian worshipper. You pray for their salvation. So it is now the ancestor need your help to gain their salvation. So I found that it is a very clever and also a very innovative strategy of co-opting and also Christianizing a very deeply indigenous Buddhist concept. That happened in China, Korea, Taiwan, and it seems to be the same case in Southeast Asia, in Laos.
Yes, thank you. I'm not a specialist of Buddhism. I studied Buddhism, but not so much. But I'm resting, my remarks on Father Marcello Zago's doctoral thesis. And he is what the popular Buddhism as practiced in Laos, and he has very enlightening remarks on the way Laotians have reinterpreted that concept of transmission of merits in some cases, like the wedding. It's not fear involved, no fear involved, but blessing for the whole family. And if you omit that, then you are not going to be blessed. Huh? Thank you. Thank you very much.
Yeah. Another question? Yeah. Maybe you can come here. Okay.
I want to inquire Father Roland.
Oh, yes.
Since you've been residing in Vietnam,
Yes.
I don't have much interest in the history of Vietnam, but I think the Catholics in Vietnam was minority because Vietnam before was Chinese, under China's in the middle of Vietnam.
1,000 years under you, yes.
Those Chinese words and the Chinese temples, something like that, more or less like a Buddhist or Tao, Tao Gao, And Catholics maybe only under French imperial. Then
Catholic community sorry, I interrupt you. Catholic community started being flourishing, starting in 1615, Jesuit mission. First Martin 1644, and then it was really flourishing at that time. So not a French colonial thing. Some communists would like to say that, but this is totally false. Thank you. Okay, so sorry. Yeah.
Yes. Thanks for your information because I'm not too familiar with the Indo-China, what they call Indochine in Francais. So actually Cambodia and Laos are very small country when compared with Vietnam. So I think because of imperialism, so the Catholicism get developed. But of course, Jesuits did a lot of achievement.
Yes, thank you for your remarks. Minority in Vietnam, yes, Catholics are 8-9%, nobody knows exactly because they don't count. Laos, they are 0.3 or 0.4%. So it's not comparable. And in Laos, there are no mainstream notions. They are the descendants of these slaves, and tribal minorities. You know, it's a very different picture. So in Vietnam, Catholics are proud, and there are many well-educated people, and they are influential, and not in Laos, no influential position in Laos. So it's very different. That's why I was so trying to powerfully support them. Even the bishops, you know, they won't speak up, you know.
Okay, thank you, bishops. Problems with each other. Okay, another question. Yeah. Okay. For whom will be the question?
For Dr. Spooner, I would like to ask, you know, because you asked a lot of questions and some of them were answered, some remained unanswered, you know, for the second part probably, you know, but I would like to ask about you know, because you mentioned that, well, it is a bit striking, you know, that actually, you know, Nagasaki has been chosen as one of the places. Of course, it was connected with the Catholic Church very much, you know, with the martyrs, and also afterwards with the mission of my compatriot, you know, Saint Maximilian Maria Kolbe, who built the church that was not destroyed, by the way, you know, that you mentioned as well. Why have you found any information, or do you have your own thoughts about why actually, you know, Nagasaki was chosen as a place, you know, that the atomic bomb was dropped, you know? Why no other city, you know? Why particularly that one with such a massive, you know, Catholic presence?
Well, everybody can come up with a theory about that. Coming up with the facts is a little bit more difficult.
Right.
So what I try to do here is provide the data for people to see. And obviously there's a lot more work that would have to be done on this topic. And that was only a 15-minute or a half-hour presentation, so many books could be written about this. Many books have been written on this. Can you find documentation, evidence as to exactly why the Nagasaki was selected and bombed? Not in the secondary literature. I haven't seen any of it. I haven't seen any primary documents of those that have been released that talks about that. Which means that there's what we call a big lacuna in the data. If you take a look at the article from the Revista de Cultura, I show you in that article, and in my second part of this, the data that the targeting group under the Strategic Air Force collected on the Japanese cities. And you'll find that data extremely detailed, very well presented. Pictures, numbers, all of the different targets with photographs. What has been released and available on the internet are the information for Fukuoka. And in that data you have the information on Kurume, which is a city just to the northwest of Nagasaki. So clearly highly detailed information existed on the city itself. Not only the military installations, but the economic installations that were supporting military operations, with detailed photographs, aerial reconnaissance of the areas. So the targeting groups that had this under the Strategic Air Force was factored into the Manhattan Project, the Manhattan Group, who did the actual selection, would have had highly detailed information about the targets. But that has never seen the light of day, as far as I know. So that clearly existed, but whether anybody can get their hands on the documentation, if it still exists, is an entirely different question. So,
There actually is some primary and secondary resources available in both English and Japanese, so I would encourage you to look at some of the bengaku, the Genpaku, Bungaku, like that has a lot of information
yeah,
there.
but we're talking about the U.S.
Yeah,
argument.
and some of that is
cities.
available, yeah, yeah,
Okay, well,
yeah.
this is a short presentation, but to the extent that that does exist, it will definitely show that the city was very well known and the status of it was very well known. That's the issue with selecting the city. Now, there's other issues related to the actual bombing of the city and to what extent it was the primary target or the secondary target. And that's highly, you can get into a long detailed argument about that. Obviously, the existing narrative says it was a secondary target. But in keeping with not providing the data from the weather aircraft and the photographic aircraft, so there's no specific data out there that will show that Kokura was indeed clouded over and the logs of those aircraft, that the aircraft indeed did go to Kokura first. That's an open question still. So all we need to do is have the people that hold the data make it available publicly, and those questions can be resolved. To date, they haven't done it.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, I told you a few weeks ago.
Some other commentary you have?
Oh, no, I was just, I mean, it was, Nagasaki was that another
Different
country.
opinion, yeah.
Oh,
Sure,
okay.
yes, sure.
Well then, I'm actually interested in more.
Few minutes.
Maybe talking about actually the martyrs of Laos,
Yeah.
because that was something actually newer to me. I'm familiar with our other two presenters' topics more. So this is newer to me, and I am interested in more of kind of how the Thomistic understanding of martyrdom was utilized in a way that was acceptable. I mean, you go into that to some degree, and I would be interested in hearing more.
You can read my presentation.
Okay. Yes, thank you.
Yeah, sorry.
I want to read it as well.
Yeah, it was, I handled that part, that theological
Yeah.
part. Lay persons could not do it, so I did it. So, well, it was a little bit, I have a question for you too, the two of you in Japan. Now, the awareness of what happened really is extremely low in the United States, that's what we heard. And maybe it's sinful unawareness. What about in Japan? Are people more aware of the real story or not?
You mean what? Now the Nagasaki and
The Nagasaki, yes, the Urakami bombing.
Well, I think this is for him. Okay, afterwards.
Many issues to explore there. I would expect that the knowledge of that bombing outside of Nagasaki itself is extremely restricted in Japan.
Oh, sure.
And I do that, make that comment based upon my discussions with Jeffrey Gunn, who is a leading Australian historian of Macau, who lives in Nagasaki. He's been there for 20 years with his wife, and he taught at Nagasaki University there, Nagasaki University. And he said, when the students come from outside Nagasaki, Japanese students coming to Nagasaki, they know virtually nothing about Nagasaki. So it may even be more restricted in Japan. Maybe.
Another suggestion would be to look at the literature of Nagai Takashi. Oh, sorry. You might want to look at some of the literature of Nagai Takashi.
Wait, yes,
Yeah,
I know about that. But
yeah.
actually what we're talking about here is the selection of Nagasaki as the target, whether it was primary or secondary. And for that material, Nagai does not discuss that. He only talks about the impact of the bomb, not the selection process.
We have just few minutes, 3-4 minutes. Maybe I will have last question for you. The experience, maybe time after break time. What is the message of Nagasaki for our Christian life today? So now it is not about Amazonia. And also how lay people are so important in the church today. This is the future of the church. So, for me it was really the miracle of Nagasaki that Christianity survived through 2-3 centuries without priests.
Without bishops.
Without priests.
No bishop, Alessandro. Yes. Elected voter was 4. So what is your experience? What is the message for today like? May I ask you?
I think we look at the Nagasaki Christians and their identity, their Christian identity is very much a part of who they are. And understanding Nagasaki Christians, again, we can't paint that with a broad brush, even when we're looking at the so-called Kakure Christian, because after the discovery at Wohora Church with Katijan, there was also the Sampuku Christians, who were those who actually chose to return to the church in Rome. And the Kakure Christian,
others not.
yeah, who...
And one main aspect of not returning to Catholicism. I'm sorry.
Oh, sorry. There was an obstinacy in that. Sorry.
Sorry. One aspect of not returning, or maybe one of the main aspects of not returning to Rome, was exactly the cult of the ancestors, and the cult of the martyrs, the form of the martyrs. It was one main argument of not returning to Rome, or not.
Maybe we have last message with you, because from Laos, Vietnam, from what is the message of this afternoon lectures for all of us? You are very...
Sorry, sorry, I'm, Japan. I know a number of things on Japan, on the mountains of Japan, especially connected to Macau here and so on. Yes, so I'm very much aware of that. In this, you mentioned that very, very softly. Missionaries coming from the Philippines. Then.
Exactly. Yeah.
In the Portuguese narrative, they say they ruined the whole situation because and martyrdom came also because of these false brothers.
Yes.
Okay, sorry, I'm not going into that because
yes, but
Father Stella is not here, but still.
Yeah.
But you mentioned about the veneration of ancestors. This is a basic. We need to get deeper into it. Not only for the Chinese or the Japanese context, but for the whole, I would say, of Asia, at least Southern and Eastern Asia. Southern Asia has it too. Because it's a very rich concept. And try to not to merge Christianity into that in any fashion whatsoever. You asked the right question, the theological question beneath. I was asked that question at the ODC. What do you mean by ancestor? Who are they? And so on. But we need to get deeper into that. There is different solutions, but we have the historical fact that the veneration of ancestors was strictly forbidden for a couple of centuries, 2 centuries, until the Second Vatican Council. I know there were things, signs of opening up just before, but this that need to get into that concept and to make it more fruitful for the whole of Christianity.
Thank you very much. Okay.